Yes, so in the last class, bacho, we were talking about ionic bonding, if you remember, right? We were talking about ionic bonding. And now in today's class, we are actually moving towards covalent bonding, right? So these are two primary bondings that are the part of our syllabus that we need to discuss, covalent and ionic, right? If you remember, bacho, in the last class, we talked about that ionic bonding is actually the bond between metal and non-metal. So you can say that ionic bond ज़्यादातर बनता है, it is always between metal and non-metal. जब metal non-metal को electron देता है अपना, so it will form what? Ionic bond. And this definition is only for the identification of compound कि वो ionic है या वो covalent है. If you talk about covalent bonding, so it is always the bond between non-metals. It is always the bond between non-metals, and non-metals, you can say that it can be same or different non-metals हो सकते हैं, right? And you need to keep remember over here, बच्चों, बहुत सारे बच्चे ऐसे सोच लेते हैं कि if the bond between metal and non-metal is actually ionic bonding, and the bond between two non-metal is actually covalent bonding, तो यकीनन कोई ना कोई मेटल और मेटल के दरमियान भी बॉन्ड होता होगा. So remember this, there is no bond between two non-metals, right, बच्चों?
Yes.
There is no bond. There is no bond between two metals. When two metals combine, it is actually an alloy, right? क्या बनता है आपके पास? Alloy बनता है आपके पास, bond नहीं बनता है. ठीक है? Then let's move towards the definition, which we talk about, the very perfect definition we just wrote in the last class, right? The perfect definition was what? The electrostatic force of attraction between oppositively charged ions, right? This is the perfect definition for ionic bonding. The electrostatic force of attraction. Ionic bonding is actually what? This is actually electrostatic force of attraction. This is electrostatic force of attraction, and you need to keep remember it is between the opposite ions, right? What I'm saying, opposite ions. This is the force of attraction between opposite ions, right? You need to keep remember this, that all the time, whenever you talk about ionic bonding, there is always the force of attraction between opposite ions. You need to use the word ions over there, right? And if you talk about compounds of covalent bonding, so there will be a simple molecular structures. They are just small molecules and they will form molecules, right? And so there should be what? Intermolecular forces. There will be intermolecular forces, right? Between the molecules. Now, this is intermolecular forces between the molecules. Over here, you can use the word molecules, right? But if you talk about electrostatic force of attraction, so you must need to use the word between the ions. Keep remember this. It is very important. And now one more important thing is the electrostatic force of attraction is the stronger force. So you can use it when the word is strong electrostatic force of attraction between the ions. And this is weak. The intermolecular forces are weak. So the one which is between the molecules is actually weak force of attraction. Is that clear?
Yes.
Now, the one more difference that you need to keep remember over here is, bacho, you just need to keep remember over here when you talk about ionic bondings. So over here, metal lose electrons, right? Metals lose electrons while non-metal receive electrons, right? Metal lose electrons and non-metal gain electrons, right? Metals lose electrons and non-metal gain electrons. While if you talk about covalent bonding, but in covalent bonding, there is a sharing of electrons. There is sharing of electron, and this sharing is actually mutual. The number of electrons from both non-metals are equal, right? So जितने number of electrons एक non-metal share कर रहा होगा, दूसरा भी उतने ही कर रहा होगा. So you need to keep remember over here the electrons are going to be shared, and it will be mutual sharing from both sides. The electrons are going to be same. Is that clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, anyone from your side, can you repeat this? Any one of you? Yes, I just want that Abir repeat this. Abir, can you please repeat the difference between these two?
Okay. Ionic bonding is between metals and non-metals, whereas covalent bonding is between the same type of same or different non-metals.
Yes, what does this means? इसका क्या मतलब मैं समझूं अबीर?
That covalent bonding cannot be between a metal and non-metal.
Yes, and one more thing, that for suppose this is only for the identification of compounds कि वो ionic है या covalent. For suppose if I just give you one skill test बच्चों, I just ask you to identify the compounds, which one is ionic and which one is covalent. So if I just write carbon dioxide, so we know that the carbon and oxygen both are non-metals. So this is the bond between these two elements should be covalent bond, right बच्चों? If I just gave you ammonia, it is nitrogen and hydrogen, both are non-metals. So the bond should be between these is covalent, right? Or suppose if I gave you what calcium chloride, so you can say that there is one metal and one is non-metal. So the bond between these two elements should be ionic. Is that right, Bacho?
Yes.
Yes. So yes, I just want from Hamza. Hamza, can you please repeat the second point?
In ionic bondings, metal lose electrons and non-metals gain electrons, and in covalent bonding, the non-metals share electrons.
Yes, that's great, but this is a point number 3, and the point is perfectly right. You need to understand this whenever you are doing MCQs. This is very much to know. All the time in MCQs, they just confuse you by saying that metals and non-metals share their electrons in ionic bonding. So you need to keep remember that if they are saying like this, the statement will be wrong, right? Metal always lose electrons to non-metal. That is why ionic bond form. So you need to keep remember whenever you talk about ionic bonding, there should be what the loss, transfer or donation of electrons, not sharing. Sharing loves आप सिर्फ use कर सकते हो covalent bonding. Is that clear, every one of you?
Yes.
Yes, Asra, can you please repeat the second point?
Yes, sir.
Can you please repeat the point number 2 over here?
In ionic bonding, metal lose or non-metal gains electron, and covalent bonding only we share that. They both are non-metal and neutral.
Point number 2, bete. The one which is in red.
Point number 2.
Yes, the one which is in red.
Red one.
Yes. I want you to read the red one.
Ionic bonding are strong because they had electrostatic force of reaction between the opposite ions.
Yes, there's this strong electrostatic force of attraction. It is not the meaning that I am saying that the bond is strong. I am saying that bond is strong because it has a strong electrostatic force of attraction, right?
Yes.
Yes, and the second point is of covalent bonding.
It has intermolecular force between the molecules.
Yes,
that is why they are weak.
Yes. Yes, that's great. Very good. So, बच्चों, this is the case that you need to understand, और ये difference आपको याद रखना है. ठीक है. चले आगे चलते हैं. अब हम बात करते हैं covalent bonding की, especially now we are moving towards covalent bonding. अब अगर आप covalent bonding की बात करते हो, तो covalent bonding में बच्चों आपने क्या करना है? सबसे पहले आपने ये बात याद रखनी है. The first very important point that you need to keep remember, you need to make note for this. This is important note. You need to say that the number of electrons required, the number of electrons required in the last shell, the number of electrons required in the last shell by any non-metal, right? The number of electrons required in the last shell by any non-metal is actually the number of electrons share, right? So you need to keep remember whatever the number of electrons required by any non-metal to complete its duplet or octet, right? So it is always the number of electrons share, ठीक है? अगर आपको देखना है कि कितने इलेक्ट्रॉन शेयर किए जाएं, तो आपने याद रखना है कि आपने ये देखना है कि कितने इलेक्ट्रॉन इसको चाहिए हैं, ठीक है ना? जितने इलेक्ट्रॉन उसको चाहिए होंगे वो उतने ही इलेक्ट्रॉन शेयर करेगा. For suppose if we have hydrogen, so hydrogen has only one electron in the outermost shell. Now we know that hydrogen का पहला ही शेल होता है और पहला ही शेल में एक ही इलेक्ट्रॉन होता है और पहले शेल में मैक्सिमम 2 इलेक्ट्रॉन आ सकते हैं. So it means हाइड्रोजन को अपना ड्यूप्लेट कंप्लीट करना है. हाइड्रोजन को अपना ड्यूप्लेट कंप्लीट करना है. ड्यूप्लेट कंप्लीट करना है तो इसका मतलब इसके आखिरी शेल में 2 इलेक्ट्रॉन होने चाहिए. So how much electrons required by this hydrogen atom? इसको कितने इलेक्ट्रॉन्स चाहिए बच्चों? एक चाहिए. तो कितने शेयर करेगा बच्चों? एक, ठीक है ना? चाहिए एक तो शेयर भी एक ही करेगा. जब चाहिए एक तो शेयर भी एक ही करेगा. सो ये दूसरे हाइड्रोजन के साथ एक इलेक्ट्रॉन शेयर कर लेगा. नाउ दिस इज वन hydrogen having one of its electron. It is the second hydrogen having its one electron. Now they both share their one electron and now both the electrons are in the center between these two atoms. ये दोनों इलेक्ट्रॉन इन दोनों हाइड्रोजन के बीच में घूमते रहेंगे, कभी इस वाले के पास कभी उस वाले के पास. इस तरह वो दोनों को थोड़ा थोड़ा स्टेबल करते रहेंगे. And in this way you will have hydrogen molecule to form. Is that right बच्चों?
Yes.
Then if we talk about another molecule, right, and most of the time you will ask to draw the structures and you always need to draw the structure of valence shell, right? Valence shell, because it is something looks beautiful when you draw the last shells, right? अगर आप इसके अंदर inner shells बनाओगे तो बहुत गंदा लगेगा डायग्राम ना. तो in covalent bonding you always need to draw the last shell. So right now I'm talking about chlorine. We know that chlorine is 17. So it should be 2, 8, 7, right? So in the last shell, it has 7 electrons. It is a difficult task to calculate the number of electrons and convert them into the number of shells and then find out the last shell electrons. So the very easy way to find out is the group number. So you can find element in the group as it is in group number 7. So it must have 7 electrons in the outermost shell. The periodic table के अंदर जो आपके पास vertical columns होते हैं वो group कहलाते हैं और वो group number जो होता है वो actually last shell के electrons को define कर रहा होता है. Just numbered column के अंदर वो element होगा उतने ही उसके आखिरी shell में electrons होंगे. So right now this is the second last column of the periodic table, 7th group, right? तो उसके अंदर chlorine मौजूद है तो इसके आखिरी shell में 7 electron होने चाहिए. So 7 इलेक्ट्रॉन क्लोरीन के पास मौजूद है. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. बच्चों 7 इलेक्ट्रॉन्स हो गए. बताएं हाउ मच इलेक्ट्रॉन्स आर रिक्वायर्ड बाय दिस क्लोरीन? 1. तो शेयर कितने करेगा? 1. This is the thing that you need to keep remember. बच्चों हमेशा यही चीज याद रखनी है. पहला पॉइंट आपको यही याद रखना है. Even chlorine right now having 7 electrons. क्लोरीन के पास 7 इलेक्ट्रॉन्स हैं अभी. वो चाहे तो बहुत सारे इलेक्ट्रॉन बहुत सारों से दे सकता है, बात कर सकता है, दे सकता है, अपने इलेक्ट्रॉन शेयर कर सकता है, बट उसको करने ही नहीं है. क्यों नहीं करने? बिकॉज उसको सिर्फ एक ही इलेक्ट्रॉन चाहिए. जब उसको एक इलेक्ट्रॉन चाहिए तो उसको एक इलेक्ट्रॉन पूरा करने के लिए अपना एक ही इलेक्ट्रॉन किसी के साथ शेयर करना पड़ेगा ताकि उसका इलेक्ट्रॉन इसका इलेक्ट्रॉन मिलकर इसके 8 इलेक्ट्रॉन्स कंप्लीट कर सकें. सो राइट नाउ इफ यू हैव अनदर क्लोरीन
तो जितने चाहिए होते हैं उतने जितने चाहिए होते हैं उतने शेयर करता है.
यस, जितने चाहिए होंगे उतने ही शेयर होंगे. द रेड लाइन में जो मैंने लिखा है यही बात मैंने लिखी है. द एलिमेंट एनी नॉन मेटल जिसको जितने इलेक्ट्रॉन्स चाहिए होंगे अपना ड्यूप्लेट या ऑक्टेट कंप्लीट करने के लिए वो हमेशा उतने ही शेयर करेगा. इज दैट क्लियर?
Yes, sir.
Any problem to any one of you?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Now let's see. For suppose आपके पास एक हाइड्रोजन है, ठीक है ना? For suppose आपके पास एक हाइड्रोजन है and hydrogen has 1 electron. You can even draw over here, right? हाइड्रोजन के पास एक इलेक्ट्रॉन है and we have chlorine as well. क्लोरीन के लास्ट शेल में 7 इलेक्ट्रॉन्स हैं. So they can even share 1 electron of each. So they can even form HCl molecules. Right now This is one of the example in which we have two different non-metals. They can even react and they can even form a covalent molecule by sharing electrons between the non-metals, right, bacho?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Now, for suppose one more definition you need to write over here, one more important point. You need to remember if you have two different elements, right, and we have different number of atoms as well. For suppose we have NH3. Just look at over here, NH3. Like if we have CH4, so you can see this. We have two different non-metals over here, and we have different number of atoms as well. Right now, carbon is 1, and hydrogen are 4. We have only two non-metals, carbon and hydrogen, but the number of atoms are different. We have 1 carbon and 4 hydrogens. We have two non-metals only, nitrogen and hydrogen, but we have different number of atoms, nitrogen 1, hydrogen 3. So what we need to do in these cases, so you need to keep remember the element which needed more electrons, right? The element which needed more electrons would be in the center. This is the next important point that you need to keep remember if you are going to talk about the structures of covalent molecules. So if you are having such cases, so always remember this, that the one which have more electrons to share would be always in the center. For suppose if you talk about nitrogen, so it is from group number 5. In the periodic table, you will find it in the group number 5. And hydrogen is not in any group right now in the periodic table. So you can say that we know that it has only 1 electrons now. So how much electrons required by hydrogen? It only required 1 electron. But we know that nitrogen is in the fifth group, so it has 5 electrons already in the outermost shell. So it only required 3 electrons. So you can see this nitrogen required more electrons, right? So you need to keep remember nitrogen should be in the center, right? And from here it can share 1 electron with hydrogen in these way, right? So you need to keep remember nitrogen is from group number 5, so it has 5 electrons in the outermost shell and it requires 3. ठीक है ना, 5 हैं इसके पास, लेकिन इसको शेयर सिर्फ 3 करना है क्योंकि इसको चाहिए ही 3. तो 5 तो हैं बट शेयर कितने करेगा? 3. 1 है यहाँ कर दिया, 1 यहाँ कर दिया, 1 यहाँ कर दिया, 3 होगा. टोटल 5 थे तो 2 बाहर आ जाएंगे. इज दैट क्लियर बच्चों?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
और हाइड्रोजन के पास एक ही होता है तो वो एक ही शेयर कर लेगा. इन दिस वे यू कैन सी दिस नाइट्रोजन बॉन्डेड विद 3 different hydrogens, and in these cases both of the elements completing their duplets and octets, right? Right, bacho?
Yes, sir.
Now let's talk about the second example as well. If you talk about second example, bacho, so it is right now methane. Again, CH4. So carbon is from group number 4 in the periodic table. You will find this in the column number 4, right? So it must have 4 electrons in the outermost shell. So इसके आखिरी shell में 4 electrons हैं, तो उसको 4 के 4 शेयर करने ही हैं ताकि 8 हो जाए. ठीक है ना? इसके पास 1 इलेक्ट्रॉन है तो उसको बस 1 शेयर करना है. So the one which requires more electrons would be in the center. So right now कार्बन को 4 चाहिए, ज्यादा इलेक्ट्रॉन इसको चाहिए, तो कार्बन आ गया बीच में, right? एक हाइड्रोजन यहाँ, एक हाइड्रोजन यहाँ, एक हाइड्रोजन यहाँ, एक हाइड्रोजन यहाँ. We know that कार्बन के आखिरी शेल में 4 इलेक्ट्रॉन होते हैं, 4 के 4 शेयर करेगा, 1 2 3 4. और हाइड्रोजन को सिर्फ और सिर्फ एक ही चाहिए तो एक शेयर कर लेगा. In this way, all the 4 hydrogens sharing their each electron with carbon, and in this way carbon forming 4 different bonds with 4 different hydrogens. Am I clear, every one of you?
Yes, sir.
Chale, now it's your turn. You need to show me your skills now. This is your skill test, right? I just want to see कि आपके कितना समझ आ गया है. Can you draw the structure of PF3? Can you draw the structure of water molecule? Can you draw the structure of carbon tetrachloride? Can you draw the structure of carbon CF3Cl, right? Chlorofluorocarbon, this is one of the chlorofluorocarbon, right? Can you draw C2H6, it is ethane. Can you draw N2H4? These 6 molecules are now sure task. And for your reference, I am doing this for you so you can see the reference as well. Start it now and send me the pictures if you done. It is not only for the one electron share from each side. It can be even two electrons from each side. For suppose if you talk about oxygen, if you talk about oxygen molecules. So in oxygen molecules, we have two oxygens together like this, right? We know that oxygen has 6 electrons in the outermost shell because oxygen is from group number 6. So it has 6 electrons in the outermost shell and it requires 2 electrons to complete its octet. So if oxygen has 6 electrons, so 4 electrons out because they need 2 electrons, so they must need to share 2 electrons as well. So it will be inside. And the second oxygen has also 6 electrons, so they also need 2. So 4 outside and 2 need to share. So it will be oxygen to oxygen double bond. Is that clear, Bacho?
Yes.
Then for
Sir, could you
suppose for
repeat?
क्या कह रहे बेटे?
Could you repeat, please?
Yes, for suppose, just
Yes,
look at
sir.
over here. For suppose if you have carbon dioxide, so we have 1 carbon and we have 2 oxygens, right? Right.
Yes, sir.
Carbon is from group number 4. It has 4 electrons and it also needs 4 more electrons to complete its octet. And oxygen is from group number 6. It has 6 electrons, so it requires 2 electrons more to complete its octet. So carbon has only 4 electrons in the outermost shell and carbon को 4 के 4 शेयर करना पड़ेंगे ताकि पूरे हो जाएं. तो 4 हैं, 4 कैसे शेयर करेगा? दो एटम्स के दरमियान 2 इधर कर लेगा, 2 इधर कर लेगा, राइट? ऑक्सीजन के पास 6 हैं, इस 8 पूरे करने हैं, तो 8 पूरे करने के लिए 6 में से 2 शेयर करेगा बस. तो 6 हैं टोटल, उसमें से 2 शेयर करेगा, 4 बाहर रहेंगे. 6 हैं टोटल, 2 शेयर करेगा, 4 रहेंगे. तो इट विल बी कार्बन डबल बॉन्ड, यानी कि 2 इलेक्ट्रॉन शेयर हो गए ईच एलिमेंट्स के थ्रू, ईच एटम. तो आपने 2 लाइनें बनानी है. तो इट विल कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड लाइक दिस. इज वन ऑफ यू.
सर प्लीज दोबारा समझा देंगे, बहुत ज्यादा हैंग हो रहा है, समझ में नहीं आ रहा.
जी सर, आपकी स्क्रीन काफी
स्क्रीन हैंग हो रही है?
यस
जी सर.
हो रहा है.